Hello, this video is to help fix the problem that we were having with 39.9 in the classroom. And one of my students actually figured this out and sent me the fix. And, when I see how simple the fix is, it really kind of threw me off a little bit because it was such a simple thing that I just basically forgot about. I'm looking at, in my little Project Explorer area here, two different versions of the exercise 39.9. You can see this version is an older version, and what my student noticed is that in the libraries, I do have the MySQL connector file included in the project libraries for the old version, which is why that one worked. If you look at the newer version that I've been doing this semester, that being fall 2019, that library was not included, so no wonder we were having issues. I think what was most perplexing about it, though, is it seemed to kind of work. So apparently it doesn't need all the connector stuff to do all the work, um, but it is clearly missing from this version of the project. So what I'm going to do is, to add it, is I'm actually going to go to the project node here and do a right click. I'm going to select properties from the bottom of the list here. Then I'm going to go to libraries right here. We're going to go ahead and add a library. And because this is NetBeans, NetBeans has all the libraries sitting here, which is a little bit different um, than using Eclipse. Eclipse, you have to actually go out and download them and drop them in or have the file handy. So I'm going to go ahead and add that library. Just selected it from the list. And now you can see it is included. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. All right, so that's now added to the project, so it looks just like the old project. I'm going to go ahead and select the index page here and then go ahead and choose to run. So it is going to go to Chrome, and I'm going to hit the run button here. It'll take a moment for Glassfish to fire up down here in the output window so we can watch that as it happens. Check all the different output windows. So it's kind of interesting that there's actually three different output windows. One's for the server, one's for the project, and then one's for the database that runs in the background of NetBeans. So I'm just going to keep this up here. When it does launch, it'll come up on the screen, and then hopefully we'll have all the functionality that we were missing in that last video. The other thing I want to note is the videos that preceded this one for exercise 39.9, I had problems rendering those, and I tried several times to get them up to YouTube and tried every little trick I knew, and it turned out that I was just beyond their time limit, so they don't like you to upload videos, at least on school accounts, I guess, of longer than 2 hours. So I split the video into two pieces, and then all of a sudden it was able to upload. So you see now that I do have the application up on screen, and I'm going to try all the different portions of the application. So the other tab that I have open here is actually a tab showing the table that we're connecting to in the database. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can see what the ID numbers are and to actually see the data populate the database. So the first thing I'm going to do is just type in that first ID number in there and do a view so that, okay, so now it looks like we're not working as we should, so we might have a problem with the code. So I'm going to actually pause the video here for a second, but for most of you, what's going to happen is that's going to be the fix for your application. So provided everything else is in the right place and set up the right way, you should have a functioning application at this point, provided that all your code is intact and correct. So I'm going to pause or stop the video here and try to correct the problems. But at least now we have the connector in there, and like I said, that's probably the problem for most of you. So you should be all set at this point. All right, just a little follow-up addendum to what I just had before. I was able to fix this, and what I did is I had to do a little bit of comparison to my old project, but I discovered that I had made one change here in my code. So in the view method, I had this first parameter set to 0, which was incorrect for the ID. So I switched that back to a 1. And then I shut down Glassfish. I hit the red stop button, came back to the project node, did a clean and build, and then relaunched the project. That loaded it up into the browser, and I've been messing with it a little bit, but just to give you an example, excuse me, you can type in ID number, and this is one that I know is in there. So if you click view, it does pull the data back. If I want to update this record, let's say change the middle initial, I can click update. Oh, and there I got an error there. So I have to track that one down. But it's going to be, at this point, it is functioning and interacting with the database, which it wasn't doing before. So at this point, it's just a matter of really figuring out these little errors like this. But you notice how it's pointing to very specific spots. So I'm just going to track that down and fix it. But let's see if we can go back here. We can probably do a clear. Let's see if we can do an update. I think I have one in here that's this. So most of it seems to be working okay. The update didn't work. Let's see if we can try insert. We don't have an email address here, so let's drop one in and see if that one works. Okay, so it looks like insert and update aren't working quite right. So I'll see if I can figure those out within the next few minutes and add it to this video. If not, I'll record a separate video and post that. The other thing that you can do is you can always look at last year's or the previous video that was already in the video list, and that will show you functioning completion. But rest assured the project is really, really close to being done and right at this point. So we know that view works just fine. We know clear works. So that we just, oh, of course, insert and update don't work. I never added them. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do in the video here is I'm going to see if I can add those in, and then we'll have a working project. All right, since we've discovered that we don't have an insert method and we don't have an update method, it's no surprise that they don't work. So let's create those. And what I'm going to do here, just to kind of accelerate the workflow, is I'm going to copy my code from my previous iteration of this just to make it go a little faster. Normally I would do a complete walkthrough and talk through of each part, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the methods and paste them in. I am going to make a couple of slight adjustments to them though, and then explain as I go what those adjustments are. So the first thing I'm going to grab here is the insert method. So let's just pull that from the old version, and let's drop that right above clear. I think is a good spot for it. Let's paste that in, and then let's take a quick look. We're naming it insert because that's kind of what we decided up above, and we are once again setting up a try catch here. So once again, anytime you're interacting with a database, you need to put in some sort of exception handling to keep the thing from just completely crashing. And the one thing that I'm going to be adding here is I'm going to add one additional line. And if you remember, we're using the email field in ours, and it's not listed here. So this one stops at telephone. So I'm going to change this to say email. So if you're in the process of copying the code, this is a good time to pause the video and copy that code. The one thing that you'll notice as you're working with this code is that the approach is not that much different. Remember, the PS insert piece was predefined up in the database section. So at this point, we're just calling that connection statement where the query is pre-built, and then it's put into a prepared statement, and then we just access all of that by just simply calling that keyword, and then we're just doing a set string. We're putting in the ID value and then the actual name of the field, and what these numbers are values that correspond to the order of how the items are listed in the query. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 9 question marks. So each one of those numbers basically correspondingly refers to those positions. So this is insert. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab the update method. And you'll see that this is not that much different than insert. In fact, they're nearly identical. So I'm just grabbing the code for that whole method, just making sure I got the whole thing. Looks like I do. And then back over to the current version. And let's put that right below insert and above clear. Let's paste that in. Once again, I'm going to add a stipulation here for email. And I have to be careful here with these values. So this one's going to be a little weird. So what you'll notice that we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we go to 8 with ID. And let me explain why that was happening. That once again relates back to this. So the update kind of provides these like values for each field that we're working with. And so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this will be 8 for us, which then will make ID 9. And I hope that kind of makes sense. So we're just kind of like moving things a little bit. So we just have to make sure that we change those numbers accordingly. So let's start by duplicating the telephone line here and changing it to email. And then adding or changing this 7 here to an 8, which then forces the ID to be 9. And those are basically values related to the order of the stuff in the SQL query. But functionally, it's really not that much different than the insert, because really the command that's making it happen is set string. We're just changing a string in that object. We're applying it to each one of those corresponding values, and then we're executing the update, and then we have some error catching built into it. So let's go ahead and do a save on this. I'm going to stop Glassfish from running again, and I'm going to tell you what, it's not always necessary to restart Glassfish, but I usually find that I have better, more stable results when I do. So I stopped it. Now I'm going to go ahead and come to the project node, do a clean and build that recompiles all the code. It is true that when I hit the run button, it does the same thing, but it's kind of a paranoia thing. It's like when you run into problems, I usually resort to the clean and build because it not only rebuilds the code, but it also like blows stuff out of memory that doesn't need to be there. So I always find it a good practice. And then given that, let's go ahead and hit the play button again. And then the project will rebuild. We'll demonstrate insert and update, and then we should be all done, which will be kind of a good relief for everybody. I'm going to pause the video while it's doing the build. All right, Glassfish is all the way up and running now, and I just want to point out a couple of things down here in the Glassfish console that corresponds to some parts of our application. So whenever we do our initialize database routine here, the first thing it does is it loads the driver, now that we have it, right? And it gives us a message, connects to the database and gives us a message. And if you look down here in the console, you'll see that it did say MySQL database driver loaded and database connected. So we know that it's hitting the init and it's working just fine, and no error messages are popping up. If I bounce back over to the browser now, it is back up on screen, and we know some of our entries here. We know that we have this one. So let's do a view. Okay, you see the data is retrieved. This one does not have an email address, so let's add that email address in there. Do an update. Looks great. Let's go ahead and clear the form, and then let's do an insert. Let's create a brand new record. And I don't believe that I have any records here that have all 5s. And the other thing I want to point out is, see, this is the email address we just added. It wasn't there before. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the form, and I'm going to type in an ID with all 5s. And at this point, it doesn't even matter what the text is, honestly. Just to put something in there. This should probably, I think, be numbers. and just anything to put it in there. Let's do an insert, and it says data successfully inserted. Now, not to be paranoid, but I always like to go back to the database when especially when I do like initial application builds, because that way you can see that it's actually transmitting the data to the database. So this is a pretty powerful thing that we've done here. We've built a web interface. We've built a bunch of methods with database interactivity, connecting to a remote database and successfully doing all the CRUD operations, and that's pretty impressive. The other thing that you should note is when you're looking at NetBeans, that anytime that you run certain commands, certain things will be updated here in the console. And if you remember, every time that we wrote like a system out print line or whatever, and you're not finding something, and why don't we actually demonstrate that? I think that's kind of a nice little test. So if I do a clear here and then type in all sevens, which I know I don't have, and do a view, notice it's saying record not found, which is what we tell it to put in the status field. I think that status field is really helpful, but then you'll also see that it also put it in the console, so that then we are really creating a log for ourselves. And you can also write these system out print lines, instead of having them just write to the console, they can also write directly to a text file, so it can live append a text file, and that's just another process to throw in. All right, but that's a completed and working application. And now that we have finished it, I'm going to do a code review with you guys. So I'm going to put the key code up on the screen. So this is our index.html file, top part of the page. As you scroll down, middle part of the page, and then the bottom part of the page. And if you're strategic, you pause and copy the code. Let's go over to the staff file, staff Java file, and starting at the top, scrolling down, scrolling down a little bit more. So here's view. Here is insert, update, clear, and then all the getters and setters for everything are down below. All right, we're going to call that an application, and thank you for being patient with the videos. We finally got them all recorded and with a solution. So good luck with completing it yourself. If you have any issues, please let me know, and I'd be glad to help you.